At the end of the 18th century, Western Europe was dominated by the French Republic. It had won a series of victories over its enemies in the War of the First Coalition and sought the final defeat of its main rival, Great Britain. Initially, French authorities considered a plan to invade Ireland with 120,000 troops under the command of Napoleon Bonaparte. However, during the preparation process, it became clear that this operation involved excessive risks and had to be abandoned. So they decided to choose another location for the final attack. Their focus was on Egypt, which at the time was part of the Ottoman Empire, but under de facto Mamluk control. The French saw it as an ideal base for threatening the military and commercial interests of the British Empire. Napoleon strongly supported this idea, seeing Egypt as a strategic location for a possible invasion of British India. Bonaparte was also extremely ambitious and had his own motives, which were inspired by his hero, Alexander the Great. He wanted to build his Eastern Empire and at least repeat Alexander's success. Napoleon's grandiose plans coincided with the Directory's desire to remove an overly ambitious general from France. So, in March 1798, the French government appointed him as a commander of the 40,000-strong expeditionary army to invade Egypt. This army was composed of the best soldiers and commanded by the most talented generals. In order to give the expedition a scientific component, Bonaparte invited 167 of France's leading scientists. He had to explore Egypt and show Europe new discoveries. To avoid a possible clash with the British Navy, the purpose of the expedition was kept confidential. No soldier or sailor had any idea in what direction the ships would be traveling or what the ultimate goal of the operation was. With the help of his agents, Napoleon spread the rumor of a landing in Ireland through Gibraltar. This information reached Great Britain, and its government decided to strengthen control over the Western Mediterranean. They knew and saw the French preparations at Toulon and other ports, but had no idea of the ultimate purpose of the operation. The British Mediterranean fleet was located on the Tagus River in Portugal. The significant distance between Tagus and Toulon made it difficult to constantly monitor the enemy's actions, so on May 2nd, the British sent a small squadron to the Mediterranean Sea. 2 weeks later, they reached the coast of France, but as a result of a storm and strong winds, the British ships became estranged, and some of them were seriously damaged. Napoleon's campaign started on May 19. His fleet left Toulon, followed the coast of Provence, and then sailed south to Corsica and Sardinia. The main fleet was joined by ships from Genoa, Ajaccio, and other Mediterranean ports. Then the united forces of the French moved on Malta, which they captured within 2 days. At this time, the British, after repairing their ships in the ports of Sardinia, moved toward Toulon. They did not find the French there, but joined up with their additional forces that had arrived from Portugal. The Royal Navy subsequently sailed toward the Italian coast. There, the British discovered that Napoleon was in Malta. The British commander, Horatio Nelson, correctly assumed that the ultimate goal of the French is Egypt and decided to urgently move there. After successfully capturing Malta, Napoleon continued on his journey. On June 19, his fleet departed for Egypt, leaving behind a garrison of 4,000 soldiers and an occupation administration on the island. Mistakenly believing that the French were ahead of them by 5 days, not 2, Nelson ordered the fastest possible arrival in Egypt. On June 22nd, the two fleets passed each other at the minimum distance. The British did not notice the French at night and overtook them. Napoleon, recognizing this, took his fleet to the northeast and distanced himself from the enemy. 6 days later, the British were already in Egypt. They did not find the French there and sailed north to the Balkans the day before their arrival. The next day, Napoleon finally arrived at his destination. He ordered the ships to be unloaded as quickly as possible, fearing the arrival of the British, and on July 2nd, his troops captured Alexandria. From here, Napoleon's army continued to pursue their enemy and conquer new cities. Then the French moved across the desert toward Cairo, the capital of Egypt. On July 21st, they faced the Mamluk forces at the Battle of the Pyramids, in which Napoleon won a brilliant victory. The French defeated the enemy and already on July 24th entered Cairo. General Bonaparte established his authority in the city and tried in every way to please the local people. He demonstrated a good knowledge of the Quran and claimed to be the liberator of the Egyptian people from Ottoman and Mamluk oppression. However, his attempts to please the Egyptians did not lead to anything good. The locals did not believe him and treated all French people with suspicion. While Napoleon was enjoying his victory, the British returned to Egyptian shores again. They discovered a French fleet in the Bay of Abukir and inflicted a crushing defeat on it. As a result of this victory, control of the entire Mediterranean Sea passed to the British Empire, and most of the French ships were destroyed or captured. But despite the heavy defeat, Napoleon did not lose hope. The day after receiving news of the outcome of the battle, he told his officers, "It seems to me you like this country. That's very lucky. For now, we have no fleet to carry us back to Europe." Indeed, the French were performing very well on land. Under Napoleon's leadership, the French army defeated the retreating forces of Ibrahim Bey to Syria and gained control of all of Lower Egypt. And on August 31st, General Deze captured Beni Suef, a pivotal point that opened the road to Upper Egypt. During the following year, French army achieved several victories against the Mamluks and advanced to the city of El Qasir. Things seemed to be going well, but bad news was waiting for Napoleon. At the end of October, a powerful revolt broke out in Cairo. The rebels seized many important sites, including the Al-Azhar Mosque. With heavy losses and with great difficulty, the French were able to suppress this revolt and regain control of the city. The second bad news came from Istanbul. Upon learning of the French defeat at the Battle of Abukir, the Ottoman Empire declared war on them. Sultan Selim III began to form troops for a future attack. He planned to strike from 3 directions: across the Sinai Peninsula, from the sea, and from southern Egypt by the remnants of the Mamluk forces. Upon learning of this, Napoleon decided to prevent an invasion and attacked first. In February 1799, a 13,000-man French army marched out of Egypt and invaded Palestine. First, they captured the Ottoman forces of El Arish and then passed through Gaza and approaching Jaffa. On March 3rd, the French initiated the siege of this fortress, which they did not conquer on their first attempt. Napoleon therefore sent a messenger there demanding the surrender of the city. However, the Jaffa authorities did not appreciate this gesture and brutally murdered the emissary. After that, the French fiercely attacked and eventually took the city, savagely looting it. During the siege, an epidemic of plague broke out among Napoleon's troops, severely affecting the army's ability to continue the campaign. But despite suffering heavy losses, Bonaparte decided to continue his offensive. He assembled healthy soldiers and approached Acre, the next Ottoman fortress. A long 2-month siege began, which ended unsuccessfully for Napoleon. The Ottoman forces, aided by the British Navy, successfully repelled the French attacks and forced them to retreat. Heavy losses, as well as news of the outbreak of the War of the Second Coalition, forced Bonaparte to return to Egypt. Upon returning to Cairo, Napoleon allowed his troops to rest and then led them towards Alexandria. At Abukir landed 18,000 Turkish soldiers, who captured the fort. However, the Ottomans were in no hurry to attack Cairo. Napoleon decided to take advantage of this moment. On July 25th, there was a battle in which the French defeated the Ottoman landing force and took the Turkish commander prisoner. This victory gave a small respite to the French, but did not fundamentally change their strategic position. Under these circumstances, Napoleon Bonaparte decided to return to France. Not wanting to be captured and observing the deteriorating situation in France, Napoleon handed over command of the troops to General Kleber and along with his closest companions sailed to Europe. After 41 days, he reached the shores of France without incidents and landed in Fréjus. The soldiers of the French army reacted negatively to the departure of their commander. They felt betrayed and abandoned. In these difficult circumstances, the new commander, General Kleber, thought about how to save lives and bring them home. It was supposed that the French troops should be evacuated in accordance with the terms of the El Arish Convention, according to which the French left all their conquests and assembled in 3 northern ports, awaiting transport. However, due to Britain's refusal to sign this document, the war continued. Kleber defeated the Ottomans at the Battle of Heliopolis and suppressed a revolt in Cairo, but he himself was soon killed. The British Ottoman forces then went on the offensive and inflicted several heavy defeats on the French. Finally, on September 2nd, the French army capitulated in Alexandria. General Mignou achieved the repatriation of the troops to France, but gave the British Egyptian archaeological finds, such as the Rosetta Stone, which is still preserved in London. The Treaty of Paris of June 25, 1802, ended hostilities between France and the Ottoman Empire, returning Egypt to the Ottomans. The French Republic's attempt to seize the Egyptian vilayet under the complete domination of the British Navy in the Mediterranean Sea was doomed to failure. Despite the outstanding fighting skills of the French army and the outstanding command led by Napoleon, the expedition was relatively successful for several years. After the British destroyed the French fleet at the Battle of Abukir, the surrender of the French corps in Egypt seemed only a matter of time. Nevertheless, Napoleon's Egyptian expedition led to an increased interest in the history of ancient Egypt. As a result of this campaign, a vast amount of historical artifacts were collected and exported to Europe. And in 1798, Napoleon established the Institute of Egypt, which laid the foundation for the study of this civilization and culture.